I get to be paired up with young talents, female talents who are very ambitious, driven, and I love seeing that. I love seeing that sparkle, and I want them to basically have that sparkle and to reach their potential. And I love that I was able to have these connections with them. Like I got really positive feedback from one of my mentees, and we still talk to each other. And she was telling me like, I go around and tell the world how amazing you are and so forth. So it makes me really happy that I'm able to make such a big impact in someone's life, because you typically don't see the results. Like you do so much work, but you don't see it. But when you hear those positive things, you feel very fulfilled and satisfied.
Melting Pot, a global podcast series hosted by Payal, connects guests who have inspiring stories and reaches out to a multicultural audience over 52 countries. Guests are diverse, such as celebrities, entrepreneurs, travelers, and many more who've had a turning point in their lives and moved over to a holistic lifestyle. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, social media. Hi everyone. Today on Melting Pot, we seem to have a very remarkable guest who's joining us. She wears many hats. She's in the financial sector, but she's also a passionate, wait for this, blogger, self-published author. Her book is titled Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. She's also a YouTuber, a mentor, and a dedicated advocate for women's empowerment. Please welcome Urmi Hossain to the show. Thank you, Urmi, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Urmi, so can you tell us a little bit about your background and where you are from and where you are now?
Yes, it will be my pleasure. I am originally from Italy. I was born and raised in Italy. My parents are from Bangladesh, so I have that double cultures in me. I spent most of my life in Italy, then I spent a year in UK to go back to afterwards go back to Italy. And now I am based in Canada. I'm based currently in Montreal. I did my bachelor degree here in Montreal. I did my university here, and now I've been working in Montreal.
So before we talk about other stuff, I just wanted to understand from you I've read a little bit about it on your website and some of your blogs, but just for my listeners and viewers, if you could, and if you don't mind, sharing your experience growing up in a traditional household and being an immigrant family living in Italy. What was it like growing up with two different cultures, a completely different cultures?
Exactly. They are completely two different cultures, and can definitely say that there is good and bad in it. Meaning that for me, it was a struggle because I basically grew up in Italy, which is a very what like it's basically I grew up in the Western society, and all of my friends were Italian. I went to an Italian school. I used to hang out with Italian people. And however, when I would go back home, of course, it's a traditional South Asian household. And I felt a lot of a struggle in a way when it came to, there were some cultural clashes because when I would be around my Italian friends, they would tell me, oh, you're fully Italian because you're born here, you're one of us. But I was always very much aware that this was not true because I did not look like them. I couldn't do a lot of the things that they could do. And when I would go back home, also the same struggle. Even though I looked like everyone else around me, the reality was that from inside, I did not fully feel I was Bengali completely. And so there was a sense of not feeling like I belonged anywhere. I didn't feel I was Italian enough. I didn't feel I was Bengali enough. So there was that kind of feeling. And it was something that I always carried throughout the years until I came to Canada. And when I came to Canada, it was like a relief, I want to say in a way, because I felt like I wasn't alone in this because Canada is such a melting pot. It's a multicultural society. And I could see that there were a lot of people like me. But I did struggle a little here because to this question, what are you from? I was not able to give them a proper answer. I always felt like I had to prove myself, I had to explain myself, I had to give them the long story. A lot of people just say one country, but I could not say one country. I always had to give them the long version of my origin. So there was a little bit of struggle there. But those questions, they gave me a sense of, they triggered, let's say, some thoughts in me. They gave me something to think about, something to reflect upon. And afterwards, after a couple of years, after having open discussion, conversation with other people like me, they saw it. They were like, this is not a bad thing. You don't belong anywhere, but you can create your own belonging, your own box. And so that's how I came to conclude that the fact that I have two city, it's really not a bad thing. It's actually a strength of mine. It's an asset. I'm able to bring valuable insight, valuable perspective, my own perspective. And so that's how I came to, let's say it, I always say I'm Italian Bengali going forward because I am a fusion of two cultures. I'm not just one.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So you're essentially a citizen of the world, so to speak. And I can
Yeah.
completely, yeah, and I completely understand that and appreciate that because I also feel similar. Okay, I did not have the kind of struggles that you did in terms of a traditional home, fortunately for me. And but I still didn't, I even to date, I don't feel like I feel like I belong here, there, and everywhere. Wherever I am is where I belong, where I create my world. And I'm happy within it. And I have that sense of confidence that, and also I feel like it gives me an edge over people. And it's a conversation starter. And there's so many experiences in my life that others may not have had because they've had this very straitjacket way of living. So I completely understand where you're coming from. And the fact that you've now been able to come to terms with it and you've been able to make a statement for yourself, I think I know it's been a journey for you, but it's incredible how you've actually gotten to a point where you've also felt the need to write about it. So just tell me a little bit about your book and what actually encouraged you to, and my understanding is that it's a self-published book. So what encouraged you to actually write that book? And just a little background to what I can understand from the title what it may be about, but if you could just explain and elaborate a little more on it.
Yes, my book, I self-published it 2 years ago. And I was encouraged, or I would say inspired by another self-published author who lives in Canada. And she had a very similar background as mine. She is Canadian Pakistani. And what happened, I came across her book, and so I was reading it, and then I approached this person and I said, "Oh, how did you write this book? What was the process?" I wrote this book because I wanted to basically talk about how I was feeling, talk about my problems, and I had to find a place to write about all of this. So when I read her book, I could totally resonate with it. I felt like she was telling my own story because of how accurate and precise her story was and how similar was to mine. And so I was inspired by her. And afterwards, what happened is like I read a book called How to Write a Book in 30 Days. And so I used that as a way to prepare myself. And so I wrote this book because I also wanted to tell my story, share my story to the world. I didn't want to keep it just to myself. And I felt like it was, like you said, a conversation starter. Because a lot of the times when people approach me, I feel like they're interested in learning to my story, even though it might be sometimes heavy for me to go on and on for 10 minutes about my origins. I do feel like people are very much interested. And I started to notice that a lot of people were very much interested in learning about my stories, especially through podcasting. Like I was invited to speak in a couple of podcast shows, and I was like, you know what? How about I write it down somewhere so I could give something to talk about to the society. And I also wanted to create a more awareness, a sense of community, a sense of belonging for other people out there. And my book is really about being a third culture kid, basically growing up in Italy while also having parents that come from a completely different society, completely different culture. And I talk about it from the perspective of a South Asian woman. Because of the South Asian woman, there's a lot of double standards. So there was also that added layer factor that came with being a third culture kid, but also being a woman in the South Asian society. So I speak about it from that perspective. And it really took me 30 days to write it. It was 30 days I had my ideas very clear. So then I wrote it down. Then I found someone on Fever and she helped me to basically format it, edit it, come up with a cover page. And after basically another 2 weeks, the book was self-published.
Excellent. That's amazing. That requires a lot of, because I know you have a day job, which I would like you to also talk about as to how you got into finance and then to be able to balance a day job with all this other stuff that you do in acting as an enabler for women and young girls and paving a way for them to be empowered, to be able to look after themselves, to be able to think for themselves. And I think that that's a very important role that you're playing. But again, you also have a day job. So tell me a little bit about your day job and how did you, I know it's in finance, that's what I read. So how did you get into finance?
Oh, good. You know what? You're the first person who says that they find it weird that I'm in finance. Yeah, you're the first person who says that, but I can tell you for a fact that I love finance. I love what I have studied. It happened that finance used to be my minor. It was not my major. And I did not like my major. And then I was like, okay, let me try something, like let me try take some classes that are from my minor. Because I used to be in business. I used to be in international business, but I did not like the major. So I took some finance classes and it was love at first sight. I love going to classes. I love listening to my professors. I love taking the exams. There was like to the point that I actually extended it for a year because I enrolled to another program called Honors in Finance. And I wrote a thesis about art and wine investing. Then it came the day I had to graduate, and I was super upset. I was like, I don't want to graduate. Like, I want to stay in school forever. I want to keep studying. I want to study finance. You know what? I had to graduate, or otherwise, you're going to kick me out. So I graduated, and then I started to work in the financial sector. And I started to work in the financial sector. I was like, okay, I want to continue studying. I want to continue studying finance. So I pursued a designation in finance called the CFA, which stands for Chartered Financial Analyst. It's probably one of the highest designation that one can get in the financial sector. And I was a little bit hesitant on do I go towards this route or not? But I knew one thing, and this is what people told me, was like, I think you have a drive to learn, so go for it. And it was the best decision I ever made. Even though it was hard, I loved studying for this program. It was a do-it-yourself type of thing where you don't have a professor, you're not in a classroom setting, you study on your own at your pace before the deadline, basically by the time you give the exam. And so I got the charter basically last year. It was the best decision ever. And now I work for a Canadian company. It's in the investment management, basically it's in the investment management field. And I love what I do. I love finance. I really love finance because I think it's very dynamic, which goes really well with my personality because I'm a very dynamic person. And I use my role and like in the company to also make a change and to spread their message. No matter what I do, I'm always trying to spread that message of women's empowerment, especially because in finance there is a lack of diversity or lack of representation for certain roles, especially, and I want to change that because I went to many interviews and every time it was the same thing that I would say. It's just a lot of men in the management team or a lot of men in the like a part of as directors. And I often would question it when I would go to the interviews. I would be like, okay, what are you doing in terms of having more women in certain roles. And they told me it's not them trying to discriminate against anyone. It's just that a lot of women don't apply for these roles. And it's sad to see that because I think often women probably don't believe in themselves, probably they don't want to be like surrounded by a lot of men in a company because they don't feel like they can be understood. But if you don't take the steps, if you are not being a change maker, things will never change. If it's a team of a lot of men, you still have to go forward with that. And I had a very good example where 2 weeks ago I went to a conference and I was sitting at this table. So I was going as a representative of my team and I was sitting at the table and it was just me and this other person. It was this man sitting with me at the table. And then other four people joined and they were all men. So I was in a table of five people and I was the only woman. And I was messaging my coworker. I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm the only woman at this table." But I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I think if I want to bring diversity, I have to be there. So I don't see this more like a challenge. I see them as an opportunity to make a change. So and I told her, "Oh, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality." So anyway, that was the story. But I very much love finance. I think I don't know, such an interesting subject. And yes, I do have, of course, my day job. It's a full-time job, but I also like keep a boundary there. I'm not someone who is overworking because it's important to have that type of balance where you dedicate the rest of the afternoons or the evenings to pursue your passions and your hobbies because those are very important to make you a complete person. They're also important for your own mental health, I think, and for other things as well. So, yeah, I keep my boundaries right there where, yeah, after a certain time, I'm out.
What is the most important advice typically that you would give a young woman who's just starting her career in finance or in entrepreneurship?
I think the one that I always suggest in finance or any type of industry, honestly, and that's one thing that I also do for myself, it's to be your own advocate, especially because I was told to do this by a lot of my male managers. They said that if there are things that you want to achieve, if there are things that you want to complete, you always have to speak up for yourself because no one else will do it for you. And this is something that I also share with my mentees, but also other people, because no one knows you better than yourself. And if you want to, let's say, get enrolled into courses, or if you want to, I don't know, work in some projects, if you want to work on some skills, or if you want to get a salary negotiation, a promotion, stuff like that, you have to bring this forward to the people. And it's only that way that you will be able to grow in the company, for instance. Yesterday, something happened to me. This was a mentee of mine that approached me. She was telling me that when I want to study in finance, and I probably have to go to Abu Dhabi to study for a university, which is very prestigious. When she told me the name of this university, I said, "You have to go there. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, when are you going to get this back? You're young, you don't have other commitments, so you should go forward with this." And so I also like she really liked the advice because she was thinking, I do want to try this because if I don't try this opportunity, I will regret it for the rest of my life. And so I also push the people to explore different opportunities and don't fear the uncertainty because it's when you don't take those chances or risks that you are basically losing everything. So I also push people to get out of their comfort zone and get comfortable with the uncomfortable because it's all about yeah, like growing comfort zone, and I try to promote this like with all of my mentees and people that I interact with.
That is so incredible. Thank you so much, Urmi. I've really enjoyed listening to you, and you are a courageous woman, and you obviously have that smile on your face defines who you are and how you want to lead your life, and not just your life but how you act as an enabler for others as well. And I think it's a very special way to be. So good luck, And I hope you have a wonderful future ahead. And for more weekly conversations, do listen to Melting Pot on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Follow us on YouTube and on Instagram at Podcast Melting Pot. So until the next episode, this is Payal signing off.